Hi everybody, Cheaply Chic. Welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new, welcome. So glad you're here. So today I thought I would do a video and bring you along for putting together what I'm going to use as my December daily this year. A lot of people have asked me to do a tutorial for my journals that I make, and I always say yes, that I'm going to do them soon, but then I just haven't had the time to do them yet. But I do appreciate you guys so much for saying that you would like for me to do a video like that when there are already so many out there. I really appreciate it, and I am definitely going to. But I thought maybe it would be fun to create my December daily here, and I can show you how very simple it can be to put together a journal. I say that, and it should be, because I'm not going to do this super fancy. I want to put together something that I'm going to use, and I'll decorate it as I go throughout the month of December. So I'm just going to put together the book that I plan on using. This is a vintage little golden book. It's a book that I had as a kid. Not this exact copy, but I was drawn to it because it was something that I had. It has a library pocket in the front of it, and I just think this is so much fun. It was checked out in 1989 and the last time in 2003, and I'm planning on keeping this on the inside of the cover. So I want to use the cover of this book, and then I'm definitely saving the pages. I might use some in my journal and then in other journals that I create. So the thing about a little golden book is it is stapled. The pages are stapled inside of this binding right here. So there's really no way to salvage that binding, although I am planning on cutting this off anyway and just using the cover itself, but I want to do my best to save these pages. Oh, and just like that, it ripped off. Which isn't surprising. These books are usually pretty, see, you can see the staple in there, usually pretty beat up. I don't want to rip my cover though. I think I'll just take my little mat here and cut this off. I didn't want to cut the pages, and I already did a little bit. Bummer, because I like adding them inside my signatures. That's all right. I'll mess with those later. But now I have the papers. And then I have my covers, and I'm just going to straighten this edge up a little bit. The paper's a little fragile. I'll just use my scissors, probably best. I'm going to have this covered up with fabric, so it's not that big of a deal, but I do want it to feel straight when I'm making it, and that one's nice and straight. So I have my two covers, and I've already gone through and cut my spine. I already have some of this pre-cut. This is a really thick chipboard that I bought on Amazon. I love this stuff. I'll leave a link for it in the description box down below, but you do not need this. You can use anything from like food packaging to scrap chipboard that you have around your craft room. What I have done so many times when I didn't have this is doubled it up. I've glued pieces of chipboard together and made it nice and thick. So don't feel like you have to go out and buy a nice thick chipboard. It's just something that I already have, so it's what I'm going to use because I already had it cut. So that worked out. And just so you know, my spine is 2.5 inches wide, and I had pre-cut it 9 inches, but the little golden book was shorter, so I went through and just marked it with a pen and cut it with an X-Acto knife so that it can measure up and match my covers. So all you need to do is go around and measure your cover. Mine is just shy of 8 inches. So I just made sure that my spine was the same length. I also went and cut a piece of fabric. This is literally just some scrap fabric that I have in my stash. And you can see here, this fabric is really something that I just eyeball most of the time, but I know that those of you who haven't made one before would like a little bit more detail than that. So I always just kind of play with it. I put my spine in the center, and I know that I want about 1.5 inches on each side, so that's what I've left here. With the little golden book, I'm going to keep this image on the front of my book, so I don't want to cover too much of it. I'm going to have to cover some of it, that's just the way it is. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So it's about 1.5 inches past my spine here, and then I've left about 1 inch on the top and bottom so that I can fold this around my spine and my covers once I've attached it. So that's something else I already have cut, and this was literally just a scrap that I had left over from my Christmas journals, and I went in and made sure that it would cover my spine. So it doesn't take an exact measurement with this. You just want to make sure that it doesn't go all the way to the outside of your spine, but you want to make sure that it covers the edges and just gives it a finished look here on your outside fabric for your seams. You could even use the exact same fabric that you used on the outside. I've done that before. I just already had this pre-cut, and quite honestly, I'm not a fan of cutting fabric, so I went with this. You'll also notice that my fabric is sideways. My hearts are sideways. I don't care because this is my personal journal. That's not something I would do if it were one I was making for my shop, but this is a scrap of fabric and I just really like the holly leaves. So I'm just going to use this, and that's fine with me. My favorite glue, this tube is almost out, so it's been upside down. But this is my favorite glue, and I use this glue for everything. It doesn't matter if it's paper or fabric or whatever. I use this Fabri-Tac glue. I really like this glue because it's acetone based instead of water based, and if I'm using it on paper, it usually doesn't leave a little ripple mark on the other side of my paper. So I'll use whatever glue is around, but if I have Fabri-Tac, I pretty much use it for everything nowadays just because it's my favorite. And it doesn't matter which fabric glue that it is. As far as the formula, there are different ones out there. It's just my favorite. Okay, so I'm going to take my spine and I'm just going to smear this glue onto it. This is why I usually do voiceovers, you guys. I'm a little better at those, but this is just so simple, and I just thought it would be fun to do together. So I'm just going to center it here in my fabric. Smush that down. And you can see that it's centered here. And of course, this fabric is so thin that it bled through the other side. I was kind of expecting that, but that is okay. I will probably decorate it. I don't like it when that happens. A lot of times when I'm using a thin fabric for a journal I'm creating, I will line it with muslin first. But because this is mine, I'm just trying to get it done. So I didn't do that, and that's fine. I will go over this and cover it later on. So now I'm just going to adhere my covers. Okay, so this is something else. You want to make sure that you leave enough of a gap here. You don't want these to be butted up against one another. You want to leave a little bit of a gap so that there is some movement and you have enough room to close your book. So I would say, I don't know, maybe 1/8 of an inch, 2/8, something in between your covers. I'm in between your spine and your cover, so I'm just going to get my glue. I hate it when you get to the bottom of a glue container. It really drives me crazy. I'm just going to try to make a little bit of a straight line and go up to the top of my spine. And I know I am going to the outside here. if you want, you can go around and kind of like smooth your glue out. You just want to kind of work quick because this stuff grabs and dries quickly, which is one of the things that I love about it. I'm just eyeballing my cover, squishing that down on there, and I'm going to flip it over and make sure that my material is straight and on the cover. So then you can see that I left enough of a gap there that you can open and close the cover pretty nicely. And then the front cover, I'm just going to do the same thing. Okay, just lining my fabric. I'm just going to spread this out a little bit. And then I'm just going to leave that little bit of a gap and eyeball my edges. Make sure my cover is straight. And I covered that word. That bums me out. I wish I'd made it a little shorter, but oh well. I kind of wanted this to have a little bit of a junkier feel than I normally make my journals. I don't know, I was in the mood for something that looked just pieced together, you know what I mean? Okay, so I'm happy with that, and I'm just going to work on gluing these edges up now. All right, I just broke down and opened my new glue. I couldn't handle it anymore. Okay. So then I'm just going to fold that up, and I like my edges to be sharp, so I'm going to make sure that that is nice and tight along the edges of my cover. Right, and then I'm going to do the top part. Fold that over. You do get glue on your fingers, so glue this down a little bit more. Sometimes when you're doing your spine fabric, if you don't get it glued down enough, it kind of makes some ripples in your spine later on. Not that it makes the book function any less, but it can be annoying if you're a perfectionist. Okay, so then I'm just going to glue on my red piece. You would never have guessed that's a scrap. I love it. Okay, so I'm just going to glue this on, starting with the center spine. And then I'm just going to work on the edges here a little bit and glue them down so they don't fray. Make sure everything's nice and tight on that spine. And then, you know, if you have any glue that's running over, I just always grab a baby wipe and kind of just smear it around a little bit, because I do like the way that the glue will grab the edge and keep it from fraying later. Okay, so now I'm just going to glue the edge of my fabric here. And I'm just going to take this little rub-on tool that I have and kind of work it into that seam a little bit. You can use anything here. Just kind of get it worked in so that it doesn't. You just want to kind of get it a little tight against the edge of your spine because that'll help it not bubble up. As long as your fabric isn't too thick. Use my fingernail. See, I started with a tool and then I just resorted to my fingernail, and that's pretty typical. This is why I have short nails. Just saying. They're not a tool. They're supposed to be pretty, right? So then I just make sure everything's nice and glued down on the spine here on this side. Again, run my fingernail along there. Help it grab a little bit. This glue is really nice. It dries pretty quickly. So here you can see where I've just kind of pressed it in a little bit with my nail, and you can use anything. You can use a bone folder or whatever. Or whatever you have on hand. Okay, and now that that's dry, I'm just going to glue down the rest of this piece here. Because of the fact that my fabric doesn't quite line up, I'll probably add some lace or ribbon there later. Okay, so this is just some scrap lace that I have in my stash. I'm going to trim it to fit and just cover the edges of this fabric here. I don't mind that it goes over this pocket a little bit. Whoever put this pocket back on in 1989 didn't do the greatest job at making sure it was straight anyway. So I want my journal to be a little junky looking more than usual, like I said, so I don't mind this. I just want to make sure I don't glue the card in, but that it has enough room to stay. I'm just going to use the same glue. Helps if the fabric's glued down all the way. And I am being really messy today. See, this just helps you see that I'm not always a pristine crafter either. Sometimes I just like to get it done when it comes to my stuff anyway. Okay. That there, and I will trim those edges after that's dry. Just trim this edge off here a little bit. Across. All right, so I'm just going to trim this lace. And I'm pretty happy with that so far. Okay, so now I'm going to pick my papers and we'll see what I come up with. Okay, so I put together 3 very basic signatures. There are 5 pieces of paper, which is going to give me 60 pages in my book. I kept them very simple. All I did was stitch some lace on and some machine stitching because I want to be able to decorate as I go. So there's going to be 60 pages, but if I feel like taping in some items, that's going to work out fine for me. So this is perfect. I love the laces. You guys know I do. And the machine stitching on the side. So I am going to add an eyelet to the center of my spine because I have this tassel that I was gifted in friend mail last Christmas and I absolutely love it. I think a lady made this for me. I could be mistaken, but I think she did. And I just love all of the different little eyelash trim she has in here and just so many things. I had this in my stuff and I think it would just be gorgeous on the side of my book. So I am going to punch a hole here, hopefully in the center. Just kind of eyeball it again. And hopefully my spine isn't too thick. Okay, I have to get out the old-fashioned puncher here. That's okay. Let's see if this will work. So I had to mess around with my hole quite a bit because my chipboard is pretty thick. If you guys have that same issue, you can always just use a drill. I've done that a lot too. And I'm just going to stick my little eyelet in there. I'm using a little one this time. I'm just going to finish using my little puncher instead. I'm pretty happy with that. So I already made my template since I knew I was doing 3 signatures. And just to give you a brief idea, I knew that my spine was 2 1/4 inches. I think I said something different at the beginning, but I'm sure that I corrected that. So I just went in and found the center, which for me was at 1 1/16. So that's where I drew my center line, and then I went in a 1/2 inch on the left and I went back a 1/2 inch on the right. So I just basically draw my lines. I mark it out at the top when I'm making my template and I mark it at the bottom. I draw my lines here. You can tell that I messed up a couple times. I wanted to find a better line, and then I find the center of the line, and then I can usually come in about 1 inch. There's lots of different ways that you can do this. I'm going to do a basic pamphlet stitch on mine. And then I'm not going to worry about the glue so much anymore because I'm going to use this tassel and it's going to hide quite a bit of that for me. So yeah, this is the book that I pretty much poke into quite a bit, and I just measured my template to be the size of my book so I can grab it. I like to pick it up and usually stand up at my desk and get a good grip on it. So you're going to want to get an awl or something pokey. Most of you probably already know this. I had a really hard time finding an awl at places like Hobby Lobby, but I will say that it's in the leather section or in the sewing notions at Joann's. So at Hobby Lobby I found it in with the leather things for making leather goods, and then at Joann's it was in the sewing notions, and that's where I got this one. So there's also a little pokey tool in the quilling stuff that I've bought before, but that one broke. So I already marked where I want my holes. I have everything lined up here, and I'm just going to poke these. Go straight down. My awl's kind of wide, but it works fine for me. The other thing I forgot to mention is you're going to want to mark the top of your template because Otherwise things won't line up if you forget. Okay, so there I have my holes poked in my spine. Now I'm going to sew in my signatures. I think this time, since I'm hoping for things to be a little on the rustic side when I make this journal. I don't know if it'll stay that way or not. I'm just going to use twine. Most of the time I use a waxed linen thread, but you can use any kind of cording. You can use embroidery floss. This is some colored craft string I've picked up at Dollar Tree. It's plenty strong enough. This is some cording that I got at Michael's, like in the beading section. I've used that plenty of times. Most of the time I just run out of things. This is some waxed cotton cord that came from Hobby Lobby, again, over in the leather crafting section. And then this is just regular hemp twine, which is what I'm going to use. So I like to take my signature, and I like to have extra string. So pretty much what I do is I just take 3 lengths of a signature, and then I just cut it off. And I know I need 3 of those, so I'll just cut them all at once. And then for a needle, I really like this large sewing needle. Originally, when I first started making journals, I bought these bookbinding needles, they were called. I got them on Amazon, and I paid too much for them, and they're so thin that they really like hurt to use. So I like this thicker needle, but I will say that you can have them too thick. This one doesn't work quite so well for me because it's so big and bulky. It's hard to push through the spine, but this one seems to be perfect. And I don't remember what type of needle this is, but they come in a variety pack, and I just like working with a big needle. That's my favorite needle, and I usually dig for it. And then what I like to do is start with the back signature, the last signature in the book. So I know this is my 3rd signature, so I'm just going to make sure that all of my papers are going the right direction and they're in the right place. This one isn't so hard because there's only 5 sheets. Basically what I do is I take some binder clips. Once I get everything tight and in order how I like it, I like to use binder clips because usually I have a lot of fabrics and baggies, and I just like how far those reach. So I clip down all 4 sides. I kind of always grip in the edge of my signature to keep it tight, and then that keeps it to where I can work with it pretty well. I'm going to make sure one more time that it's going the right direction. And then what I do to save time is I take my template that I already used and I score it on one of these lines. So I'm going to score it here, if I can get it straight in my awkward position that I'm standing in. Of course not. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, let's try this one more time. Okay, that way I can just use the same template and I don't have to make a different one. I just take my little book that I poke into my signature, make sure the top, I'm a lefty, so I don't know, I probably work backwards. My horse points that direction, and then I put my template here in the center, and again, I poke my holes. Then I'm going to thread my needle. Excuse my nails. I forget that that acetone-based glue pulls off nail polish. Not very helpful. Okay, so then I'm taking my 3rd signature. I have the top of the signature pointing toward the top of the book, and I'm going to start at the center because this is a basic stitch, so I'm going in through the center. From the inside of the book, I'm going out. And then I want to make sure that I don't pull too much string. I like to leave a tail about like that. Then I'm going to go either way, doesn't matter. I'm going to go back in through the top hole. Then in through the signature. Pull that all the way through, and then I'm going to go back down through the last bottom hole. Make sure you're going through the right row on your spine. And then you kind of want to make sure you get it tight. And what I do here is I know that my string, I'm going to pull it up because I went up here on the back so that I don't stick my needle through the various threads of my twine and make a mess, because that's always a pain. And then I'm going to try to stick it right back through, and it didn't work. So you just want to make sure you get all your papers lined up, and you want to make sure that you don't separate the thread of your string. You want to correct it if you do, because it'll be hard to knot and get tight. Okay, so then you want to make sure that your center string is going through the center of your two strings that you're going to tie together. I always go through and make sure that that is nice and tight, because it's annoying when you have loose strings. And then with that center string running down the center, I'm going to double knot this twine. And I like to leave a little tail here. Sometimes I add little hearts to the end. Sometimes I just like them to look stitched, hand stitched. I like the fact that a book looks like you stitched it together, because you did. Okay, so now that is the third signature. And the reason I made my spine so big and my signatures thin is because once I fill it up, some people really like their books getting chunky. I do. I don't care either way. But because I know that I'm going to be adding things to this journal and making it thicker, I like to have a little bit of space to work with. I have learned that I like a little bit of a fatter spine. Okay, so now I'm going to take my second signature and do the same thing. And make sure that all my papers are going the right direction. I don't have any bags in here. I figure I'll add those later when I know. Because I'm going to be working in order throughout the days, I just want to, I don't know. I don't have little ones anymore, so I do a lot of writing and not quite so much memory keeping as far as photos go. Things are pretty uneventful here. Nobody goes and sits on Santa's lap anymore. So I do a lot more journaling than anything. So that's why my book is pretty blank, and I figure I can add things to it as the month progresses. One more time, I'm going to make sure that my signature is facing up toward my right hand. I'm going to make sure that my template is facing the same direction, that it's all squared up. And then I'm going to poke my holes again. And then I make sure that I'm in the middle signature. And again, I'm going out from the signature, out through the spine, leaving a little tail here. And I'm going to come back up through the top. That's just the direction that I'm used to going. Again, doesn't matter which direction you go. I'm going to pull it tight. And then I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom hole. Go through both the signature and the spine. Come back up, and now you can see I'm just going to go back through this center hole. So I'm going to pull this tight and pull it up so it makes a tight string here, and I can hopefully not separate my thread. This is usually where I start fishing around and struggling just a little bit. Because this is a pamphlet stitch, I don't know why I'm struggling to say that word so much, it's a little more forgiving, so as long as I don't separate my thread, I can keep it loose at this point. I make it through all of the pages. There. And I can tighten it back up once I get my thread through. So now I have it here, and I just so happen to make it with the string running through the center of these two. So I'm just going to tighten it up, pull that tight, pull that tight. Now my string's tight. It's running into the center, and I can double knot these strings around and trim. So now we have signature number 1 that's going to go in the front of the book. Make sure everything is facing the direction I want it to go, and then clip everything in place. One more time, check, check, and double check. I have sewn in signatures backwards before, so I've learned to double check and check again. So then I'm just going to poke my holes. Okay, and top facing the top of the book, I'm going to sew in this last signature out through the middle, leaving a tail. And I'm going to come up through the top. And then down through the bottom. Again, I'm going to try to pull this tight and up, well, toward myself at this point. And again, I'm struggling, so I'm going to find that hole there. Here we go. Pull that through. Okay, this time you can see that my string is not in the center, so it's okay to loosen that up and work one over. So we'll see it's super loose. Now I'm just going to tighten that up and double knot my string. There we go. We have an incredibly basic journal with 3 signatures stitched in. And then, since I've already done my machine stitching, I feel like I can decorate everything pretty easily. I think before I finish, I kind of have it in my head to add these trims here somehow. I kind of like that rustic look. Oh no, I think I'm going to glue those on there really quick. Make it a little wider. Right on the edge of my fabric, so I don't cover up any more of that jingle bell word. Let that dry, and then I'm thinking I like this. And I'm just going to do the same thing on the back. Okay, I like that. Kind of add some girly. I might have to add a little bit more glue on the back there. And I'll probably do some more to it as time goes on. Now I want to add this to the side. Yeah. Let's see. I am thinking maybe I can get this on a ring. And then I think I'm going to take this cording off that she had for a hook to hang it by. There we go. I like that. And then I could add some charms to it as well. Hey you guys, so that is my very, very basic December daily to get me started. I think it's super cute. I like the direction that it's going, and it's going to be fun to work in. Yes, and you can see that it lays flat. I can just move that tassel up or take it off, and the book lays pretty flat, and there's lots of room to work in. So be on the lookout for more December daily videos. I think this will be fun to document some of my journey with creating this journal. Thank you so much for watching. I know this wasn't a super detailed tutorial, but I hope it gives you a very basic idea of how to put together a journal if you didn't know how to originally. I will be adding more of those tutorial videos that you guys have asked me for as time progresses, probably once we get into January, outside of the holidays, I would imagine. But yes, very excited to play with this journal. I can't wait. So thank you guys again so much for watching. If you don't know, you can follow me over at Instagram. My name there is cheaply_chic_. I will leave it in the description box down below, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!